Engine 1 from Car 1. Car 1's on scene at Subin Command. Give me a C.A.N report.
Hello, everybody. This is Mike Goldstein, Stickers of the C.A.N Report, coming at you with a great show today. I have a good friend. Her name is Dena Ali. She is from North Carolina. I'm sure many of you know her, and I'm sure many of you don't. So that's exciting. By the way, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas.
Happy Kwanzaa.
Happy Kwanzaa. We got a lot of stuff to celebrate, and it was a good year. It's going to be even better next year. And I'm so happy to have Dena on here. I'm so happy that we can talk about something that's really important and passionate to me. And I'm going to go through her profile, but I'm not going to be boring you all to death because she's got so much to talk about. Just a quick background. Dena Ali is a Battalion Chief with the Raleigh, North Carolina Fire Department. She also serves as the Program Manager of Behavioral Health for the First Responder Center of Excellence. If not everyone knows that one, Frank Lee helps to chair that program. Ali holds a degree from North Carolina State University and an MPA from the University of North Carolina, Pembroke. Her research focused on firefighter suicide. She's an executive officer program graduate through the National Fire Academy, and we'll go with just that. So I think that ends pretty well with that. That's really what we want to hit on today. So Dena, thank you so much for being on the C.A.N Report.
Yeah, no, thanks for reaching out and thanks for the invitation. I am excited to be on. I lit my menorah behind me in honor of this conversation with you today, but I just touched above and it's pretty warm.
And now your cat's going to knock it down.
Those candles out because it's going to be really embarrassing to set the house on fire. And yes, you make an appearance every podcast. That'd be pretty
Mazel tov.
Mazel tov. Yeah, that'd be so embarrassing to set my bookshelf on fire.
Well, it would definitely help with my followers for sure if we could have actual fire in the background.
Yeah, so happy Hanukkah. Thanks for teaching me a little bit about the menorah.
Sure. Yeah, we had a quick lesson of how to light it, where the candles go. And thank you so much for doing that. That was really nice of you. I really appreciate that. Super cool. So Dena, man, you have been on fire like the menorah there with everything you got going on. You have your book that was released. You've been writing some amazing articles. You've been doing a lot of podcasts promoting the book and talking about promoting mental health. You've been doing a lot of great things with Frank Lee in the program that you guys work together with. How did you develop this? How did you get to be so passionate about mental health and first responders?
I think very similarly to you. It starts with research and our experiences, and I think everybody has a different path to understanding their experiences and trying to find solutions. And I don't know about you, but initially when you're going through it, it's hard to talk about it with others because you don't know if you're normal, if it's your fault, if anybody can understand. So for me, it just started with a little bit of research, a little reading. And I guess I look at like a big piece of it as being luck, because I just happened to know somebody who could get an article published. And I didn't even intend to have an article published. I wrote a paper for school about firefighter suicide, and I had met Bobby Halton the year before. And I knew through meeting him and through a conversation that there was a soft spot in his heart for mental health. So when I wrote this article on suicide, I just shared it with him. Well, it wasn't even an article at the time. It was a paper. It was a graduate level paper. So I didn't look at it as it being an article. And I just shared it like, hey, I thought maybe this would be of interest to you. And he initially just loved it. And he said, hey, I'm going to publish this. I was like, what? And which was super cool. So they reformatted it a little bit to make it an article, published it. And then the bonus was, I didn't know this, but fire engineering paid me $300. And each class at the time for graduate school was a little over $700. So that gave me motivation to pay for school, because my ideas as I went through graduate school was, if I could get one paper published a semester, that would pay for half a class this semester.
Wow.
And I was able to pull that off, which was really cool.
That's amazing. So how did you meet Bobby?
Again, it's amazing how life is. It's amazing how the circumstances work. So Rick Lasky came to Raleigh to teach a company officer class. And at the time, I was a newly promoted driver. And so Rick was only teaching captains and above. But I had read Pride and Ownership. I had a copy of that. Like I had that copy before I became a firefighter, and it taught me a lot. And then right after I graduated the fire academy, I went and read it again, and it gave me so many just wonderful tidbits and bits of advice for my career. And it was really meaningful for me. So when I found out he was coming to Raleigh, I was a super nerd and I wanted to meet him and I wanted him to sign my book. I don't know why there's this obsession with people signing books.
Yeah, I feel I have so many signatures in so many different books.
Yes, yes. I messaged him on Facebook, and he told me the hotel he was staying at, and we met at the bar, and he signed my book, and we chatted, and that's when he told me about FDIC, and he asked me if I'd ever been to FDIC and told me how amazing it was. And so I was like, oh, this is great. But then when you look at how much FDIC costs and all that, like, not
Yeah.
possible. Well, that fall in Fire Engineering Magazine, there was an advertisement to be nominated for an FDIC scholarship. So I saw that and I was like, ooh, this is my way to go to FDIC. So I called my friend and I said, hey, I need you to nominate me for this. And I gave him all the details and he nominated me. And I think they had 15 nominations, 15 spots. So I was selected for the FDIC scholarship. I got to go to FDIC for free, hotel, flight, full conference pass. And Bobby Halton led the whole initiative. Day one, he did kind of like a keynote, talk to us, and they had events for us all week, and Bobby kind of showed up at each event, which was super cool. So I got to know him that week, and we developed, I don't know what you would call it, because it wasn't like a friendship, relationship, mentorship, workship, but we developed some sort of relationship, which was really cool. And the guy was responsive and he was amazing.
It's such an amazing story to have somebody like of his caliber. Like you said, you said, I'm a nobody from nobody, right? And I think we all, for the people who are the most humble, we all agree upon that. And to have somebody like Bobby, who probably in his mind probably feels the same way. I'm just a guy that runs a program and, and look for people who inspire and motivate others. And the fact that he was so motivated and moved by what you're doing, it's just incredible story, an incredible journey to now lead you down this path. I mean, without that, I think you probably would have just maybe remained stagnant for a while and then eventually gathered enough steam to continue to go where you wanted to go. But for someone to see that light in you and ignite your passion even more, it's an amazing story. So
No, I totally agree, because I swear to God, so many people in our business are passionate about things and, wish to have more influence or wish to leave the fire service better than we found it.
Right.
So many, I mean, a greater percentage are passionate and have the capacity and have the ability, but don't have the relationships to do it. Because I see it day in and day out. I teach at FDIC, which is amazing, but there are instructors in my own fire department that are 100 times better than I'll ever be. I just had that relationship that gave me that seat at the table. So I don't take that lightly. I know that I'm grateful for Bobby Halton giving me the platform. And then now you talked about the First Responder Center for Excellence, and it's the exact same thing. I actually met Chief Lieb at FDIC, and I would have never gone up and approached him because he's this FDNY, chief, big deal, smart guy, is everywhere writing articles. But he came up to me. I was going over my course evaluations, sitting in the corner, just looking through my course evaluations. And he came up to me and he said, hey, Chief Lieb, nice to meet you. I appreciate the work that you do. I've read your articles. And I was like,
yeah, talking to the person behind me, right?
Yeah, like, you know me? You read my what? And so, yeah, that I know it's really humbling and amazing. And he became the managing director of the First Responder Center for Excellence in March. And he reached out and asked me if I would get on board and help with the behavioral health side of things. And so it's been such a cool ride, and having, somebody see a little something in me and give me a platform, which is amazing.
It's, like I said, I can't say it enough how, like you just said, amazing. That's, I guess, the best word I can use as well to describe it. The fact it's, it's brothers helping brothers, sisters helping sisters. It's brothers and sisters helping each other. It's just all of it. And I think for people like them of their caliber to see this passion, this motivation that you have to help others, is sometimes we don't have enough of it. We inspire other people through teaching and training to throw ladders and do hose advancement and building construction reading and and we need that, but at the same time I think this part gets lost. And when you have people who are so intelligent and so inspiring like yourself to be able to bring that to the forefront, and I think for those two especially, that's something they're so incredibly passionate about. And same thing with Chief Rhodes. I mean, you guys collaborated with articles and talked about mental health, and it's a really big thing that you guys love to do. And on my scope as well, is I preach a lot, I talk about it a lot. It's just something that I think we're doing great work with getting it out there, but we still have so much more to do. And when I was listening to your podcast you just did with Chief Rhodes, I believe it was you said that I'm going to butcher it, but you said I want us to be able to not need the peer support system anymore. That we can get to a level where um, it's talked about enough, and that we have enough staff and help and people who are going to bring us to the forefront of everyone, that we're not going to need these peer support networks, because everybody's going to be well trained and attuned to what needs to be done. So it's with pretty much the three of you really and 1, 2, 3, 4 really, I think, inspired me a lot with the way you guys are getting that message out. How did you really get into it? Like, how did you get inspired? Did you have an experience? Was there a problem that you had that you dealt with personally that motivated you to just to the graduate paper, the way you wanted to write something that obviously you felt so strongly about?
Yeah, no, just like you did. I had a personal experience. It was the fall after I met Bobby Halton. It was really funny. I was at FDIC and I was super motivated by FDIC. And I remember thinking, in a decade, it would be amazing to be able to come back here and teach something. So I remember leaving FDIC and thinking to myself, I want to be a student of the craft and learn something or have something to give back. I never thought that it would happen as quick as it did in the area that it did, right? Because the whole time I was focused on tactics and strategy and, student of the craft and our job. Never once did I think about mental health at the time, because it was 2015 that year. We weren't really talking about mental health. I don't even remember seeing a mental health class at FDIC the year that I was there, the first year that I was there. Or if I did see it, I didn't care about it because it didn't cross my mind.
Mm-hmm.
However, that year I had just made driver. It was the first promotion in our fire department. I worked my tail off for that promotion. I studied hard. I did everything. I scored top of the list. I was promoted in the first go. And I thought that by doing so, I was demonstrating my capability. I was demonstrating that that I deserved it, because in my head as a female, I felt like I had something to prove. And so I wanted to make sure that nobody could question my ability or competence. So I did really well. But I didn't know that doing that actually made people question my competence, because it was oh, she's book smart. She could take a test, was the mentality.
Hmm.
And up until that point in my career, I hadn't encountered haters. Maybe I had, but they didn't bother me because I had more support than the haters. So up until that point in my career, everything was awesome. I had some really good mentors. I was having a blast. I had some fantastic assignments. If I did have any negativity, it truly was offset by the positive people around. Well, when I made driver, I guess my hopes and dreams were quickly shattered, because I thought that I would get promoted and go somewhere busy and get to do work. Well, I ended up at one of our slowest firehouses. Literally, I passed a sign that said, "Welcome to Wake Forest," and I still drove 10 miles to get to this firehouse. It ran maybe 2 or 3 calls.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a slow firehouse. So while I was there, one of my friends who got promoted with me, he started graduate school and he kind of talked me into it. So I started graduate school. And right when I started graduate school, I got transferred to a busier house, which was kind of cool. It's what I wanted. But that's when the real world slapped me in the face. And that's when haters emerged, because in that firehouse, there was an individual there who for whatever reason, he had an issue with me. And I mean, from day one, he wouldn't speak to me, wouldn't talk to me. And I'll tell you, I've been used to that my whole life. People having an issue. And if I just work hard, if I'm just kind, it doesn't last. It breaks them down. So, I was like, oh, here we go again. Let's go. I got this. But this was the first situation that no matter what I did, it made things worse. The nicer I was, the shittier he was. The more I ignored his rudeness, or the more I ignored him ignoring me, the more he started to make sure that I knew what he was doing. So it just got really bad. And I'm sure there were other factors, but in that time, my mental health just started to go down. And I'd get to work every day with this attitude that I'm going to win this guy over. We're going to run this big fire, save, a family, and high five and hug and be the tight crew that everybody dreams of. And every day I came with that positive attitude. And every day when I went home from work, I was just sad because the day didn't go well. I felt like every day I was screwing up or pissing him off. And what was weird was it was a 2-company firehouse, and everybody else in that firehouse was a good person. They were all really decent, good people, but they all kind of seemed to side with him. So when he was there, I felt like an outcast. I felt like a guest. when he wasn't there, we had that like family dynamic, fun, laughing. But when he was there, it was almost like people were just shy around me, standoffish, careful, whatever. I don't know. I don't care at this point. But I do remember one day we were getting ready for firehouse inspections, and the captain was like, "Hey, what are y'all gonna do?" And I threw out the plan, and then I went out while we were checking the rigs, and I was like, "Hey, let's knock out the compartments." And as usual, this person ignored me. He always ignored me. He just pretended I didn't exist. He took away whatever like power I had in my promotion. He took it away by just dismissing that I was the lieutenant, which was a driver for us. So he ignored me. But for some reason, this day, I guess I had it. And whereas normally I just let it go because it wasn't worth it, this day I pushed it. I was like, "Hey, did you hear me?" And he ignored me again. And I called him by name and was like, "Did you hear me? We're going to do this today." And he walked away. He ended up going inside the cab. So I opened up the cab door. And I was like, "Hey, did you hear me? This is what we're doing today." And that led to a loud argument. And, of course, it stopped everything in the firehouse. Captain pulled us in, sat us down, and was like, "All right, what's going on?" And I think he went first. And he basically was like, "She's this, this, and this. I've got nothing for her. She's whatever. Got nothing for her." And then he looked at me. He's like, "All right, so what's up?" And I was like, "I think he just explained it." And so I don't remember the resolution, but I do remember later that day, the captain pulled me aside and was like, "Hey, I see what this person's doing. I see you don't deserve it, but there's nothing I can do, so just keep doing what you're doing."
Why is there nothing that he could do?
Yeah, so now, of course, I look back on that and I see that as complete bullshit, right? That's his job is if you see something wrong, if you see somebody being mistreated, take care of it.
Especially as an officer. I mean, it's all of our responsibility, but I mean, the officer sets the tone.
Yes. So he didn't know that the message he communicated to me was I wasn't worth it. And so the internalized message was I don't want to be a squeaky wheel. I don't want to create trauma in the firehouse. So I don't want to make my captain do his job. So I'll just pretend like it doesn't bother me. But on the inside, it bothered the shit out of me because
Absolutely.
we spend a third of our lives in the firehouse. We, want to have that awesome relationship where we're all family. We look out for each other. And I came to work every day feeling the opposite of all of that. And I remember I'd get home or I'd get off work every day and just feel shitty. Like I get off work every day because I put on this fake happy, face all day, don't let them see you sweat. And 24 hours later, I was just exhausted. And
yeah, that takes a lot of work to ignore that.
Yeah. I get in the car, I'd cry. I go home, get back in bed. Even if we slept all night, I would get back in bed. I had no energy to do anything. It was funny how, like, now I can look back and know exactly what was going on and exactly why. But at the time, it didn't make sense to me. I remember I went to the doctor 3 times. I had them check my thyroid because I had fatigue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had them prescribe me antidepressants because I could tell that I was depressed. So I thought pills would help, which they didn't. And it was in that time I started having thoughts of suicide. They just progressively got worse. And of course, I could, at the time or soon thereafter, I could blame that one individual in that one situation for it. But with accumulation of life events, I can understand, some of the early experiences I had in my life that led to a lower self-image, which led to me immediately internalizing the way I was being treated and believing that, I'm worthless, I deserve this, I don't belong, all those shitty things.
Yeah.
But at the time, I got to the point where I was depressed. I was having thoughts of suicide. And all I can think of is they're coming because of what's going on in this firehouse. And so I couldn't talk to anybody about that. I couldn't tell anybody I'm depressed and suicidal because they're being mean to me. That sounded absolutely ridiculous. There are people who have real problems, people who've run bad calls, people who've lost loved ones, people dealing with real stuff. And I'm sad because somebody won't talk to me. I felt like that made me feel even worse, like my family, my loved ones, all proud of me, all proud of this career of mine. And, I couldn't tell them like, no, don't be proud of me. Like I'm a piece of shit. The guys don't even want me there. They won't stick up for me. But fortunately, back to what we were talking about earlier, I was in graduate school and I had this assignment at the time. It was action research. So find an area where current practices are not best practices, research and help develop better practices. So I emailed our safety chief and asked him, hey, what's the topic? Because I was just fired up from FDIC. I was wanting to save the fire service and find something to make a big difference. And he came back and said, hey, can you look into firefighter suicide? And so initially I was like, shit, what does he know? Because it wasn't something we were talking about. We were not talking about firefighter suicide. And he asked me to research firefighter suicide. And I really didn't understand why he had asked me that. And it was kind of uncomfortable. But out of the curiosity, I did the Google of firefighter suicide. And fortunately, that first Google search, like the very first search I did, popped up 3 articles that I still reference today because they were that good. Dr. Sabia did a dissertation on firefighter suicide. And then Fire Engineering Magazine had an article on firefighter suicide that had a couple contributors, and both of them talked about things outside of the calls. Dr. Sabia talked about, when you are a minority in the fire service and you're not, accepted, what that does. And she, explained Dr. Joyner's theory and how, connection, we are on earth to connect with other people. Like, we are not lone wolves. We cannot survive alone. And she talked about what loneliness does and what exclusion does, especially when you're pushed out, and how that, contributes to thoughts of suicide. And then the other article kind of talked about that. So for me at the time, as I started researching it, I started understanding why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And it was super helpful for me because up until that point, I felt even worse for having the thoughts I was having over something as silly as somebody not talking to me and, internalizing all of that. So that's what led to that first paper, then getting it published. It kind of, after I finished that paper, after I finished that, and not just thinking about myself and internalizing myself, but also in the research, recognizing that suicide is a public health crisis. It is affecting a lot of people and there are no solutions. It inspired me to solve the suicide crisis because as long as I continue to work on this, having that purpose really offset what I was experiencing personally.
Sure.
Any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's amazing. So that officer that reached out to you, did you find the reason behind that?
Yes. And once you get my book, you'll actually read about it in the intro. So that was Chief Frankie Hobson, who he was always known as being just a hard nose when he was a captain, when he was a chief, like by the book, busybody, a tough person to work for. But he was also always known for having this like huge heart, just an incredible, wonderful person. So when I finished the paper and finished my research, I sent it to him. And he was like, wow, this is so good. This is amazing. We're going to create a class and we're going to deliver it during Safety Stand Down Month. And I was like, that's great. You can deliver it. I'm not delivering it. Because remember, again, I had only been on the job about 7 years. I was still trying to fit in. And the thought of presenting to my entire fire department about suicide was not at all something that I was interested in. But he finally opened up and he's like, Dena, I can't do this on my own. I need your help. So I didn't ask a lot of questions. I didn't get into his personal business. So we ended up delivering it during Safety Stand Down Month. And the very first delivery, there was a picture in the background of Paul Combs' drawing of a firefighter in full turnout gear that had an anvil weight, and he was in the ocean, being pulled down. And there were all these sharks around him. And on the weight, it said pride. If he would just drop the pride, he would get away from the sharks. And on the sharks, it was depression, PTSD, all the problems that we face. But it was the pride that was weighing him down. And when that picture ended up in our presentation, Chief Hobson looked at me and said, hey, do you mind if I cut in? Because up until that point, I was the only one speaking. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And he got up and he said, hey, that firefighter, that's me. And he shared his experience and shared his story.
Wow.
And later I found out that right around the time I asked him if there's something that I could research, he had actually gotten to the point where he tried to call EAP because he was going through it himself. And he called our city's EAP and he got, press this button, and eventually leave a voice message. And in that moment, he felt shitty. And that's why he called EAP. But getting a voicemail brought him even lower because the guy's our safety chief. And in his mind, I can't even help myself. How can I help members of my fire department?
Wow. Yeah.
So that's why he was interested in just trying to find solutions to help our fire department. And it was beautiful, him sharing his experience, sharing his story. And at the end, as we went on and as we did this more, at the end of his story, he talked about finding a clinician outside of EAP and having sessions and going through EMDR. And at the very end, he was like, and I feel so much better now. And that's how his story ended. And it was super cool how he went from the depression that led him to calling EAP, the failure, to finding a clinician and being able to end it with, and I feel so much better now, which is fantastic.
Oh, what a fantastic story. And you had no idea until he spoke up and said, this is about me. So all that research you were doing and all that knowledge you gained was to help him.
Yeah, and I had no idea because I would have never guessed because he was, super strong, capable, emotionless type leader that nobody would have ever assumed was having thoughts, of suicide or, depression or any of that, because he wore the mask that we all wear so well.
I was having a conversation about mental health, and I was surprised by the reaction of somebody who's one of our most senior. And he went off on a tangent, and he talked about the problem with mental health is the pussification of the fire service and pussification of America, and that people truly aren't having PTSD. That some people who are crying out saying they have PTSD, they haven't seen the stuff yet, and they haven't been in that experience, and they don't know what it is. And especially this younger generation, right? They don't know what's happening. And I was really shocked to hear that the dismissal of mental health and to classify as the pussification of the fire service. And people throw that term around a lot, right? The pussification, but we don't know what other people are feeling. I don't know what he's feeling. He could have some internal issues that is bothering him, and that's his way of lashing out because it hit a nerve, right? And that story that you had with your officer is just made me think of that. And I didn't engage in the conversation with him. I pretty much Homer Simpsoned out. I just went to the bushes and walked away because it's just something that I felt like I didn't want to have a debate with at that time. But I was very taken by the fact that you would say that, and that there's people, you don't know what they're experiencing, what problems they have. And I think it diminishes their issues when people say those things in public. They don't know who they're talking to. There's people in that room that are going through some serious issues, and they're afraid to talk about it for that reason. Because somebody is going to say, well, that's the pussification of the fire service, and everyone's babies, and they need to toughen up. Well, here's this person having some serious issues, and now they're even more scared to talk about it. Because now, well, I don't want him to know about it because he's going to call me out for being weak or not really having an issue, and I need to toughen up and just move on. And as I've been progressing more in this and reading the material and listening to you and others who have done the research and have the experience, that the numbers out there, that it's not the young people that are having these issues. It's not the 18-year-olds who are fresh into this job. It's not the 20-year-olds or the 30-year-olds. It's the 40 to 60-year-olds that are having these issues. It's especially the men that are having these, they grew up with that atmosphere of, you don't talk about this stuff. You keep it deep down inside, and you move on, you do your work, and you retire. Then you can deal with your issues. And that's why we're having such high numbers for suicide. It's because we have been taught at such a young age, especially going to join the fire service, from all the salty guys before us, you don't talk about mental problems. You have a problem, you don't talk about it. You can joke around with your guys, but we have the kitchen house tables, and there's always those jokes with those undertones about the problems they're having at home. You laugh it off and you move on. And but those are the real issues that we're having, is the guys from 40 to 60 years old that, because they were so trained not to talk about the issues and not to deal with those issues, and then when they need that help, it's too late, because now they feel so weak and they didn't pay attention to who to talk to, and the pussification of the fire service, and I'm not supposed to do any of that. And then this is the problem we're having. And there's still people out there who are who have 30 years into this game that definitely feel that I'm not supposed to call, I'm not supposed to talk about it, and you're all weak for talking about mental health.
Yeah, and it's not just the fire service and a lot of research in the military. The people that are dying by suicide, you see the 22 vets a day, and everybody assumes it's young veterans just coming back. But the highest numbers are the Vietnam veterans. It is the people who are 50 plus who are dying by suicide. It doesn't mean you've got 20-year-olds who aren't, because they are as well.
Correct.
But it is that tough, don't talk about the problems generation. And when you think about our career as first responders and firefighters, we're problem solvers, we're fixers, we're solution oriented. We're constantly looking for the solution. And when you feel like you're a burden, or that your existence is causing harm, or you don't belong and you're not able to contribute, a solution that any logical mind would consider is suicide, unfortunately. Not saying it's an okay solution, but it's a solution that, unfortunately, people who are solution oriented will consider. The inability to talk and to express is what keeps people from finding alternative, true solutions to solving their problems. And in all the years that I've been researching the firefighter suicide, I found that it was rarely the cause. And fascinating, that again mirrors the military. There's this assumption that combat exposure and seeing death is what's causing people to come home and kill themselves. But the data just doesn't support that. The data actually shows that for military, at least, people who aren't deployed have a higher risk of dying by suicide. And then looking into first responder data, you find that it's not the PTSD, it's relationships and organizational issues are the top two things that are leading to substance use disorders, leading to depressions, and leading to suicide. And it's fascinating because from day one, when I started researching this, what drew me in was finding out that it wasn't the cause. Like literally the first dissertation, the first research that I read talked about feeling like they don't connect, feeling like they don't contribute, that humans, we're hardwired for connection and we want to contribute. We want to be able to, again, leave things better than we found it, right? And I knew that from day one in all of the research I did, but it was never, ever acceptable to talk about. And if you would dare say it's not the cause, you would offend somebody and whatever. So I was always careful with how I communicated because I wanted to make sure that people would, read my work and make change. And it was unfortunate that I couldn't come out and say what I wanted to say until Dave Rhodes did his keynote in 2023, where he said everything that I wanted to say. And I mean, it just opened the floodgates and it was amazing. But yeah, I don't know where the idea that, the fire service is getting soft, like it's not true.
No, it's just become acceptable. I don't think it's not soft. It's just the fact now we see a problem. And like you just said, we fix problems. This is a problem. And I think now because of that, and we're tired of losing people we love, that we see the problem. Just like cancer, we're trying to fix it. And with mental health, we want to fix it now. And now it's acceptable to talk about it more. Now it's not for us and for the people who have seen it. It's not soft. It's a problem, and it's out there. We want people to know it's out there. We want people to be able to feel free to talk about it, and without fear of reprisal, without fear of being felt that you're going to be made fun of. And I'm so happy now that it's out there, and it's part of our culture is to make sure that we're bringing this to everybody to know there's a way to talk, that it's okay to feel that way, and that if you need to talk to somebody, there's people out there, and a lot of people out there, and it's amazing. When I was dealing with my issues, and I was sat in the office of my previous department, and I had got written up for having a shitty attitude. There was bad mojo going on where I came from. I remember sitting down in the office, and it wasn't a good feeling. I knew there was something wrong. And the deputy chief hands me this like 6-page document of complaints from people because I had a piss poor attitude. And I didn't know who my accusers were. They didn't care about the issues that I was having. And before we started, he says, he hands me a pamphlet for EAP. If you seem to be upset or having problems, so here's this pamphlet. If there's a number for EAP, if you need to talk to somebody. It was the most coldest, insensitive conversation about mental health or how to reach out or anything that has to do with a human being I've ever experienced. Well, I've dealt with a lot of shit, but that one was pretty cold. You just don't say, here's your pamphlet, the number's on the back, use it. Like that's not good training. That's not how you deal with your employees. That's not how I show you that you care. That's just doing your documentation. Yes, I told firefighter Goldstein that here's a number to call. So at least he could document and said, yes, I've given him a direction for mental health assistance. I'll never forget that moment. That was one of the most, I knew right then and there that he did not give a shit about what I was going through. He just gave a shit about the documents he had in front of him and wanted to talk about the complaints, not about what's going on with you. And that put me through a really tough, dark time. It's still something I still battle, just because it was the sense of disappointment and feeling like nobody gave a shit. And like you said, like a wolf pack, and you need to feel a part of that pack. And I definitely felt, but with reading those complaints about me, it made me felt like I didn't have that pack with me. It made me feel like that nobody gave a shit, and I didn't have a direction or anybody to talk to. Because in listing those complaints, there were some things I had some real conversations with people that I thought I could trust, but instead they went right to the chief or anybody else within an authoritative figure to say, hey, Mike's complaining about this or Mike's complaining about that. And, you know, if we can't talk to our fellow brothers and sisters about problems we're having, and it like, you know, issues that you had and I had, and if you're having issues inside your own firehouse with administration, and sometimes you just need to vent. It's not a bitching session. It's you just need to vent and get it out with somebody that you feel that you can trust, because you have nobody else you can talk to. Like we talked about before, where it's really tough to go home and vent about your problems because your significant others, they don't know exactly what it is that you're going through. They know it is from the words you're telling them, but feeling wise, they really can't feel the same thing that you're feeling, the disappointment or the anger or the seclusion. And when you have somebody that you trust inside your own walls of your firehouse, and then they turn around and tell administration because it gives them a leg up, it's a hurtful feeling. It makes you feel alone. Again, that seclusion, that now nobody wants to talk to you because you're a complainer, or you know you're always going to complain that they don't like you. So I definitely, you and I have been down that road, and it's a crappy feeling for sure. And the articles that you write, that's what really, again, I clinged on to what you have to say is you talk about a lot that there's PTSD within our firehouse. In our workplace, there's a lot of stuff going on, not from what we see, but from the experiences we deal with toxic work relationships.
Yeah, and I appreciate what you just talked about with, you know, having that referral to EAP, because we mentioned it earlier about how one of my passions is peer support. I've, you know, created a statewide curriculum, and I have run a statewide peer support network for several years. And I understand the value and importance of peer support. It became a huge passion of mine. But the whole time I realized that yes, peer support's great, but only when necessary. And what's better than a referral to people you don't know or a specialized team is actual, authentic, true peer support among your peers.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing better than somebody that you spend time with day in and day out, or somebody that leads you, seeing something wrong, noticing a change in your behavior, and having the courage to come up to you and say, hey, Mike, you know, you've always been such a great part of this team, always had such a positive impact on others. And something's changed in the last 6 months. And I've had several people, you know, mention behaviors. And I know this isn't you, and I care about you. And I want to know if there's anything I can do to help you. Like,
That
what a
goes such a long way.
yeah, what a difference that conversation would have had, as opposed to, hey, Mike, I have all these complaints. You're a problem. You need to call this number, get fixed. Otherwise, we're going to go down this progressive disciplinary action and you're going to be gone.
Oh my God. I mean, you nail it. You literally nailed everything that was going on in my head. At that moment, sitting in front of him, that's exactly when I went home. And then weeks later, it's the same thing. I kept playing over that conversation. And I had just wished that he would have said that. Hey, this is not you.
Yeah.
You know, there's something obviously wrong. You smile all the time. Now you're not smiling all the time. You used to be so helpful. Now you're not helpful. What a shift in your personality. You know, what can I do to help you?
Exactly.
Or who can I refer you to? And that's when I would say it's such a cold interaction of somebody who is an authoritative figure to the subordinate, just to be, here's your number, call it. And that was, now let's talk about everything that everybody hates about you. And we need more of that. And I think that does come down to training your administrative staff and your officers that, yes, you have certain things you have to deal with and how to talk about it and how to deal with it. But you can, if you know somebody's has such a huge emotional change and behavior change, you can't be cold about it, because that's, again, you're going to walk away and play that over your head again and again and again of, I just wish you would have asked me, what's wrong? Are you okay?
Do
But
you want to
that
talk?
doesn't happen. Do you want to talk? And that's, you know, you have to be prepared. And many people talk about that. Once you say, hey, do you want to talk? Well, then that person asking that question has to be prepared, because floodgates more than likely going to open. And it's going to be tears, it's going to be yelling, it's going to be, you know, a lot of emotions coming out. And it's not towards you, you know, the person asking that question, but it's just going to be everything that's been built up. And the floodgates going to open up and emotions going to come right at that person. But they definitely have to be prepared to for that response. And I can't say enough. I wish people would have, when I worked with my previous department, I wish those questions would have been asked, even whether it's a chief or a guy the same level as me. If he had just been like, "Hey, dude, are you okay? Because you don't seem like yourself," man, that would have been a life-changing event for me. And I would have just been able to talk and get it all out without fear of being in trouble or getting written up, because that was a big deal. Like, "Oh, you're complaining again, Mike. You're complaining about you didn't get this promotion. Or you're complaining because you didn't like what I did here." Every time I would try to open up to somebody, it just would get back to that office.
Yeah.
And, that's that
Well,
whole brotherhood, sisterhood.
not even the like, hey, do you want to talk this, this, and this? But then adding that extra piece of, Mike, I care about you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mike, I value you and I'm worried about you and I'm here for you. And a lot of people have this idea that they have to refer to peer support if there's a problem, because peer support are the experts and they're trained and they're going to fix people. And that's, again, I like how you mentioned training, because peer support does not teach you how to fix anybody.
No.
It does not turn you into a mental health clinician. Literally, the components of peer support are active listening and then being a bridge to other resources. Anybody can be a peer. The class just gives you tools for the toolbox, but it shouldn't take away from the inherent natural peer support that's always existed in the fire service. And the simplicity of active listening. Like, peers don't learn how to say the right things to fix your problems. They learn how to shut up and encourage you to keep talking so that you can get out what you're going through. And then the only extra bonus that peers learn are helpful resources, and whether it's mental health resources or even understanding that EAP can be really helpful in certain situations. Like, maybe if it's parenting issues or financial issues, those are situations where EAP is awesome, or
Yeah.
even relationship issues. But when you learn that maybe somebody has deep-seated childhood trauma, that's where finding a good therapist can make a difference. But all in all, just having a conversation and just allowing somebody to get stuff off their chest is so incredibly helpful. And, you mentioned how grateful you are that we have reduced the stigma around struggles and mental health. But I will say one thing that I wish we could get to, because we still have a ways to go. And we're at the point where people are and this is what I appreciated about listening to your mental health episode. You were very honest about it. You didn't talk at all about bad calls. You talked about your personal issues
Mm-hmm.
and some relationship issues. And one thing that I know is, yes, bad calls can really screw up people, but far more of us are struggling because of other things. And we're
100%.
not quite at the point where we feel comfortable saying that that's our true source of pain. It's so much easier to say, I'm a firefighter, I've run some bad calls, it's messed me up, and now I go home and I have a poor relationship at home and I want to kill myself. Instead of really peeling back layers to understand, is it the calls? Is it what we see, or is it something else? Because the sad, unfortunate truth is, if we continue to blame the calls when they're not the actual problem, and we're not honest about our true struggles, our true experiences, our true, issues, we're not going to heal. And I still see today we're becoming so much more open about mental health, but we're still putting a lot of emphasis on the traumas and the calls. And I think it was you that asked me one day, no, somebody else, they sent me a message and they were like, hey, I saw this on the internet that over the course of 30 years, a first responder will be exposed to this many more traumas than the regular person. And this is why they're so screwed up. And, like, yeah, we do see a little more, but the true science and data supports the fact that humans are very resilient. We are wired to be exposed to trauma, and we're actually wired to respond positively to trauma. We're not wired to sit on our butts and eat cake and be happy and be around a bunch of friends all day, every day. Like, that's wonderful. It's a bonus in life. We're wired to struggle. We're wired for trauma. But on top of that, we're wired to do it in community. And a lot of people don't understand that PTSD is not solely, I saw something bad, it's etched in my brain and I'm screwed up. There are all these other factors that contribute to PTSD. And if you think about what it is, it's post-traumatic stress disorder. All of us are exposed to post-traumatic stress. Some of us have post-traumatic stress. No, I'm sorry. All of us will have post-traumatic stress symptoms after a trauma. That's very normal. Few of us will end up with PTSD. And what predicts whether somebody ends up with PTSD or not has very little to do with the trauma and more to do with everything else. What happened in their life up until that point. The biggest piece, the biggest variable, the most important variable that will predict whether somebody has PTSD or not is support. The ability to talk and express and to express themselves fully and authentically. That's the biggest variable. And a lot of people are missing that piece. That community is huge. So if you work in a firehouse where there's no trust and you can't talk about your experiences, you can't share your struggles, and you run that really bad call, yeah, you're going to be more likely to have PTSD. If you work in a very positive environment within your firehouse where you can come in and say, man, I really pissed off my spouse last night. I only slept 3 hours because I got, put on the couch. I did this really stupid thing. And then y'all run a really bad call and you're actually able to come back and say, man, I don't know what was up with that call, but it's really kind of shaking me a little bit. I need a little bit of time. And, people can come together. Or our favorite thing to do after a really bad call is to tell really bad jokes.
Yeah. Yeah. I talk to people because especially people who don't really understand our line of work. And I say, if you see me smiling, joking we're not trying to make light of this tragic event, but if we stand on scene and we're somber and we're too deep in our heads about this call, especially for me, it's always a motor vehicle accident on the highway. Usually those are prolonged scenes, a lot of stuff going on. If you just constantly are just talking about that call and you get inside your head, you're going to have a horrible shift. You're going to have 24 hours of pain. And to have those jokes amongst yourselves, and it's tough because you don't want to, everyone's taking pictures, right? Everyone's got their cell phones out and the whole world is seeing the firefighters laughing or smiling in front of a burning house or, at a horrible, tragic motor vehicle accident. And it's not because we don't care, but we need to be able to compartmentalize it. We need to be able to move on from that event. And if we can constantly are just drowning in our sorrows about this horrible event, we're going to be no good to the rest of our community. That shift is now done because now we can't get out of our heads.
Yeah, no, that was something that emerged when I was writing my book, because I kept going down rabbit holes of solutions and what works and, things to share. And I ended up down a rabbit hole on humor. And, up until that point and even writing the book, I knew that we definitely make humor out of everything. And there are times where we will find something funny that is very sick. And you cannot tell anyone in your life that you laughed about this thing. But as I did the research, I learned that's super healthy. And it's a natural response to unexplainable tragedy is to make humor. And in doing so, it actually relaxes the amygdala and it helps you process unimaginable events. So it was so cool just doing the research on it and learning that there's actually something really scientifically positive that takes place when you find humor in really bad things. And I think you'll appreciate this throughout the book. I cited a lot of historical events, a lot of really amazing thought leaders in the whole mental health space. And overwhelmingly, two kept coming back throughout the entire book. Dr. Gabor Mate, he's a Holocaust survivor. When he was an infant, his mother handed him off to protect him, and he was hidden. As he grew up, he knew that was out of love, but he couldn't get over abandonment issues throughout his life. And those abandonment issues still followed him throughout his entire life. But he wrote a book. It's this thick, but it's incredible. It's called The Myth of Normal. It's just a fantastic book.
Write that down because
it's a very, very thick book, but I think you might appreciate it. And then Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, who's also a Holocaust survivor, but they were quoted a lot in the book. And there was one story in the chapter on humor during the Holocaust where actually the prisoners basically made humor over the death of each other. And there was during the death march where they were having to pile the bodies on top of each other. And the joke they made was hey, good thing we're starving, because if we weren't, we'd be a lot heavier to throw up to the top, up on top. And it's wow, what a sick joke. But it goes to show, in the worst of events, sometimes that little bit of humor is the only thing that gets us through.
100%. It's interesting you brought up those two authors about the Holocaust. I had just finished reading Eddie Jacko, Jaku. The book is called The Happiest Man on Earth,
Hmm.
and he's a Holocaust survivor.
Might have to look.
And
Yeah.
he literally talks about the same thing, about the fact that we found humor in the darkest of times, and there was just little moments here and there when they were shoeless and starving and beaten by SS troopers and just dealing with such horrific events, but then they found a moment to joke about something. And it really that touches the core, because we like you said, it helps to ease that burden, that pain, at least to silence it at that point in time, so you can move on and try to make the most of whatever your day is going to be, or to not continuously drag you down. And I mean, it's data driven. It's talked about in people who've dealt with those horrific events.
Order placed.
Yes, I honestly, I'll fully acknowledge it, full transparency. When I got towards the end of the book, I cried.
Nice.
And I was trying not to cry. I was on the plane going to visit my mom in New Mexico, and I was with my wife and my kids, and I was reading that book. And man, towards the end, it's what's good for me is I'm not a heavy reader, so it takes me a while to finish a book. And his book was not that thick, so it didn't take me that long. But man, the way he described things, the quotes that he has in there towards the end, man, it got me. I was shedding some tears and trying not to look like that guy on the plane, trying not to cry. But it was very, very touching.
And it's a reminder, just talking about humor and trauma and understanding, what can predict whether somebody has PTSD versus not. Because when you talk about both Viktor Frankl and Gabor Mate, and probably after I read this book, I'll add him to the list, they both lived these very positive, contributory, trauma-free lives despite their experiences. They did not have PTSD. They might have had it for a short period of time, but it was not a life sentence for them. They actually emerged, better because of it. And I'm not saying like I wish that upon anybody, because that is by God the worst thing that can happen to a human. But both of them ended up having very positive, resilient lives, and they contributed like to the good of everybody else. Like the fact that, as I was writing my book, I just happened to, Gabor Mate's book was released and I picked it up. And it influenced my work so much. But it goes to show that you can endure a lot, and with a strong community and with positive coping skills such as humor, you can emerge, more resilient, stronger, better. And again, not saying that anybody should have to endure that level of trauma. But what I'm saying is if they can endure that and emerge without being damaged for life, emerge without suffering from the worst case of PTSD, what is our excuse? And I don't say that to blame us individually, because community is huge. If you do not have a strong community, if you are ostracized, if you have a cold leader who doesn't care about you, the person, or doesn't want to know what's impacting you, just wants to send you off to EAP, how are you going to process your experiences so that you aren't damaged? And
Absolutely.
I think that's the important conversation that we have to have, and why I'm so passionate about getting rid of peer support. Not completely, but in the sense, if I had to choose, like if I was given a platter of options and the only two options available were formalized peer support, whenever somebody's struggling, refer them to formalized peer support, or caring leadership and caring teams, without the option of caring teams plus the additional peer support, if it was just those two options, 100% without a doubt, it would always be caring teams, caring leadership. Because nobody wants to be referred to a stranger. Nobody wants to be told that, man, you're so screwed up, I cannot relate to you. I do not have the capacity to help you. So here is a stranger that maybe can help somebody as bad off as you. That does nothing to make that person feel any better, or that does nothing to encourage that person to reach out. However, through caring leadership or, a supportive environment where it's like, man, something's off with you and I care about you and I'm worried about you. Do you want to talk? Wow, this sounds really tough. Hey, I don't know if you've heard of this peer support team, but they may be able to help connect you with resources that can take you to the next level. But I'm here, right? And in that conversation, you're just more likely to be like, you know what? I might be willing to try these resources. Or, and bonus points, if you can even relate to the point where it's like, man, I went through a really hard time. And in that time, I found a therapist, or in that time, I reached out to this group, or I did this, and it just helped me so much. Then that
I
tells
think it's you nail it, because I think it comes down to, again, that training that we talk about is, if you don't know how to relate to those people, if not those people, but if you don't know how to relate to people you're trying to touch, and you force upon peer support, you force upon EAP, well, now it's a chore. It's like telling people you have to work out. When you tell someone you have to work out, do you really want to work out now? Because now it's a chore, right? But if you tell somebody, or if you sympathize with them, and you try to help them out, but when you tell them you have to do this, I don't know how to deal with you. Here's a number, or here's this pamphlet. Again, that person's going to just take that and throw in the trash. And this person's not going to relate to me. Or the person that I hate the most just told me I need to go talk to a therapist. I mean, that's not going to carry a lot of weight, right? That you're just literally going to walk out more angry, and that you're going to turn your back and go, that person doesn't care about me. I just came to them with a problem, and they came with me telling me they don't have time to care about me. And if you, like you said, if they said, hey, I think you could use this person to talk to, this is more advanced than and it takes a lot of balls to be able to tell that to your employee. I don't know how to deal with this problem, but I have people that I can refer you to that can help you with this. But if you need to talk right now, I'll listen. And that, I think, carries a lot of weight. And then they can move on to the next step and talk to peer support and get the help that they need. I think when you just force it upon them, and you tell people they have to let it go, your problems are insignificant, and we have to carry on with business, well, that employee is not going to be a functional employee.
Or my favorite one is leave your baggage at the door.
Yeah.
When you show up, be ready to serve everybody else. Leave your problems at the door. You can pick them up tomorrow. It doesn't really work.
Yeah, it's tough to call it. It's not a switch. And there's people, like, again, you can compartmentalize your problems until it gets to a certain point. That compartment's filled, and there's nothing to do, but it's going to spill right out and cause a lot more problems. And just the fact that you are taking those extra steps and being a leader in that world is just something to be proud of, and makes me so happy to be able to talk to you today about bringing that to the forefront. Now, everything you do with Frank Lieb in the program, I always butcher the name.
Yeah, I didn't want to call you out, but in the intro, you butchered the name.
Yeah, I butchered it.
We're not the First Responder Center of Excellence. That is a treatment center that's affiliated with the IAFF. We are the First Responder Center for Excellence.
Okay. I was reading it. First Responder Center for Excellence.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. So what is it exactly you guys do with that?
And by the way, the reason the names are so similar is both organizations started the exact same year without awareness of the other. Would have never had the exact, of and for. That's so easy to, and I do it all the time. Like, actually, right now, I looked down, I was like, let me make sure I said this right.
That's
so
funny.
The Center for Excellence is an affiliate organization of the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, which everybody's familiar with. The National Fallen Firefighters, they've been in existence for so long, helping families, and then identifying what's killing firefighters and working to hopefully reduce that. The First Responder Center for Excellence takes it one step further, and Chief Lieb says it best. He says our mission is basically to keep families of firefighters from ever meeting the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. And whereas I want to put peer support out of business, he wants to put the NFFF out of business through our work with the First Responder Center for Excellence. And we do that through, more than just the tactical efforts and, wear seatbelts, right? We know those things are important, but we also understand the things killing firefighters at much higher rates are cancer, heart disease, suicide. So the effort of the First Responder Center for Excellence is to bring the research, translate it into firefighter language, because there's a lot of research out there. And like you said earlier, somebody, we all in the academy are told number one thing that's going to kill us is heart attack. And now, there's a lot of conversation about the number one thing that's going to kill us is cancer. And so they tell us eat healthy, exercise. But then you go to the firehouse the next day and we're deep frying delicious food, and it's workout time and everybody's in the recliners. So we could be told a lot of things and not do any of it. But there is a lot of research out there today. And what Chief Lieb shares is we need translators of the research. So we are translators of the research. And it's why he selected me. He saw my work with firefighter mental health and first responder mental health, my ability to take the research and then try to shape it in a way that's digestible for the fire service.
Mm-hmm.
So we do that through articles. We do that through conferences. We have a 1-day workshop that we do. That we also have a 2-day functional fitness workshop. And we now have just created a education platform where right now there's not a lot on it, but we are literally this fall, we've been working on creating content or creating courses. We're working with universities to put together training that can be accessible to anybody. And
great.
Chief's passionate about, getting us engaged, not just at, the health and wellness conferences and the FDICs, but, like he's been at the last several CFT conferences, ensuring that, we're part of the boots on the ground, the tactical, the young guys, blending some of this health and wellness with the other stuff. And then also, he'll tell you, and every time you hear him talk, safety is a byproduct of training. It's not about being less aggressive. It's not about, hit it hard from the yard, right? It's about the more we train and the better we are at our job, the better chances we're going to be safe and accomplish our mission. So I'm really excited. He's only been at the helm for, I think 9 months now. So I'm really excited for what's next and how the team continues to grow and the work that we continue to do and just getting it out there. And just in the short period of time that we've been working together, I've been paying attention to his messaging, and he's always been somebody, he speaks from the heart, but if he is not 100% knowledgeable about a topic, he doesn't go deep into it. So I've listened, and just from us working together, from us building content, I've seen his change in his awareness of mental health and suicide. And it's so cool hearing him talk now about those topics with confidence and just sharing that information. So
I honestly, when I went to CFT last summer, I didn't realize that he was. When I heard him speak, I didn't realize he was heavily involved in the mental health awareness. I mean, I've read his books. I've listened to him speak about, again, tactics and strategies and firefighting. And when he started talking about everything that you guys are doing, I was actually quite surprised and taken by it. And that was actually one of the biggest things I remembered from from listening to him speak was him getting on a tangent about mental health and talking about the importance of it and the program that you guys are doing. And I was blown away by it. And I think somebody of his caliber, and I think helps a lot to bring that to the forefront. He's such a great person to have to chair this, because there's so many people that look up to him and follow his literature. And I think now that helps even more, that people go, oh, well, Frank Leaps, I mean, he's FDNY, and this guy's talking about mental health and he's leading the charge on it. So, it's okay now.
yes.
I can talk about it. I can deal with this problem. It's
Yeah, no,
absolutely great.
that's how I got involved with FRC is, I talked about meeting him at FDIC, and then just following his work a little bit. And like you just said, like just being like, wow, man, this guy is awesome. He's the real deal. So when it was time for my book to get published, I needed somebody to write the foreword. And I didn't want to just pick some big name that would draw attention. I wanted to pick somebody that had depth to them, somebody that, I respected. And it was actually before he blew up, because it was right before his book got published. I reached out to him and asked him if he'd write the foreword, and he said he would. And he read the entire book before doing it, which of course that's what people should do, but
Yeah.
and he did that. And I'm so grateful he did that, because as he did it, he learned a lot. And that's what made him eventually ask me to join their team, because he knew that the work that I was doing was pretty good. But what I really loved was that, like, he actually read the entire book, he absorbed it, and then he developed his a bit of passion about the topic as well, which was pretty cool.
Man, that's great. I think it's amazing what you guys have accomplished, your whole group. Now, how many are in the group there, the program? When you say you have people that are getting that knowledge out and traveling and doing these classes, how big is your team?
So when we do the 1-day workshops, we bring usually 4 or 5 experts in whatever. We try to cater to the department. A lot of times you'll have somebody speak on cancer, somebody speak on cardiac, exercise, nutrition, and then mental health. And so we have relationships with experts throughout the country in these areas. For example, Dr. Sarah Jenke, Captain Frank Lito from FD. There's a lot of incredible people. Tim Graves, he is program manager for cancer prevention. Aaron Zamzow does a lot of the fitness and nutrition. Megan Lutz. So we've got a lot more people out there who have expertise in certain areas. Now, in terms of staff, the staff for the FRC is actually a very small team, but we have relationships with a lot of people, and hopefully
Sure.
that staff will get larger and grow.
It's awesome. Now, when you said go to departments, so departments reach out to you guys,
Yes.
and then to get this not necessarily conference, but at least training or help. So when they reach out to you, do they get to cater to what they want out of the program, or is there a certain standard you guys stick to?
So we have a standard, but we do give them like a little bit of a platter to make sure that we can cater for specifically, what they're looking for, in the areas they want to hit on. But generally, you're always going to have some sort of cancer prevention, some sort of mental wellness, and then some sort of physical wellness. It may, one of them may not have the cardiac piece, but we'll have exercise. One may not have the nutrition piece, just depending, because, one day goes by really fast when you have multiple speakers.
Yeah.
So that ends up being that one day. But then the 2 day, the functional fitness workshop is awesome because they bring in like literally, exercise physiology experts, people who've worked with professional sports teams to talk about all areas. And then there is still a little bit of stress management and sleep tied to that. And we did 3 workshops this past fall, and everybody went home with like the TRX machine, which was super cool, and a foam roller. And you learned actually how to use it, which was neat. But yeah, departments can reach out. And so the workshops are not free and they're not completely cheap. However, any grant will cover the cost of one of the workshops.
Right, my notes.
But all of the online training that we produce and that we work on is free. And so when we go out and deliver workshops and, the departments pay for those workshops, a little bit of the money from that goes into helping us develop the online content that we can deliver for free later.
Okay. Now, is there a contact person, or is everything on the website? If anybody needed to contact to get you guys over and talk about everything and get their ball rolling, or is there one contact person, or just shoot an email?
So anybody can help, but there is one person who's the best for helping. And if you go to the website and request training, the email will go right to that person, Lori Jacobs.
Okay.
She's the queen in terms of getting the right information and sharing the right information and just helping departments. Because something that I had to learn through the whole process was how easy it is for departments to get grants, and to make sure, like, as a department, don't spend your money, don't use money out of the training budget. Like, learn how to get a grant, like the AFG grants right now that is open. Get a grant to pay for this training, especially when you're bringing outside experts to your organization.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's there's definitely a lot of departments, I think, that are afraid to reach out to these outside providers because of the money.
Mhm.
And I mean, you nailed it with grant funding. A lot of departments I know they do have great grant writers as well. They reach out and pay good money for people to write grants. So might as
Yes.
well make use of them and get some really good stuff out. Just not just tools and manpower, but provide a service for all of our members.
Yeah,
Now,
I rarely hear departments being turned down for grants. I rarely hear people saying, I put in for this grant and didn't get it. Like, most of the time, if you do the work to request a grant or put in a grant, specifically when it's health and wellness, rarely will you be turned down.
yeah, that's amazing. That's such a great tip. I don't think a lot of people actually use grants for that, and that's perfect. I love it. Now, your book, how long did it take for you to write? Was that over years to do that? I mean, did this just start flowing out of you?
Right now, like, if you asked me if I could write a book, the answer would be absolutely not. Leading up to writing that book, I had written several articles that were published, and then they kind of, are gone. Not gone, but they're always there. So one day I took all of the articles I'd written and I kind of put them together. And I was like, wow, this is almost 100 pages. And there were things that I wanted to change, right? That first article I wrote in 2016, things had changed. So I kind of went through and updated them and changed them, added to them. And I was like, wow, this is a manuscript. This is cool. So I submitted the manuscript to fire engineering in May of 2022. It got approved. And then I wrote from May of 20 or June of 2022 until August of 2023. And from June until December, it was on and off. I would start going down rabbit holes of research. I would find a topic like play. I didn't know much about play until I was working on my book. And so I read like 3 books about play. So I ended up taking a month off of writing to read. And then I came back and I would write a little more. And then as I'm writing that, humor pops up. So then I step aside and do a little research on humor. And then I come back. Well, come I think I got an email from them, and I didn't read the fine print. My manuscript was supposed to be done by December of 2022. So I get an email. I'm like, hey, what's the status of your book? Crap. So yeah, so that motivated me. So starting in January, I really got to work, but something clicked and I got really passionate about it and excited about it. And especially come the spring, I remember I'd put my table outside, and some days I would start with a full pot of coffee at 10 a.m. and I would sit outside until 3 or 4 just working on the book. It was awesome to be able to tell people no, not to do anything with anybody or hang out with anybody or socialize, because I was working on this project. And then in August, I was finally, I think it might have been Chief Leeb who was like, the plane. Uh, I finally landed the plane. And when I submitted my manuscript, the completed manuscript, they were like, oh, this is too many words.
Overachiever.
I know, right? This clarity count went from like, there's no way I'll ever write a book to this is a problem. This is going to be a really expensive book that's put together. And they sent that off to the review process. The review process took forever. So fire engineering, they won't just take your book and publish it. They're going to send it to people that have familiarity.
Sure.
They're going to have them review it and make sure that there's no BS in there. So because the topics were a little more complex with mine, it took forever to go through a review process. And then we started serious editing, the end of January of this last year, and edited until about June. It was forever. But the whole time I was still reading. So the longer they took to publish, the longer they took to edit, the more stuff I just kept adding to it.
I mean, I could never even think about having to do that. But the fact that you actually wrote way too much for them is impressive, to have all that knowledge and data and the research and this experience to put it all onto the page. That's very impressive. So now the book, you can get it on Amazon. You can also go through Fire Engineering. I ordered my book through Amazon, and it was supposed to be here now, and now I still have to wait. So Fire Engineering is probably the way to go. You'll get it faster, and I can't wait to read it. I'm looking forward to it. So are you doing anything with the book as we're winding down here? Are you able also to be reached out, and do you go to other departments and talk about the book and talk about your experience and help other departments, other areas?
So full disclosure, the whole third part of the book is basically a consultation guide to building peer support and like embedding it in your department. And I did that because I was teaching peer support and doing a lot, and I was getting more requests to go to places or more requests to help people than I really had the time. So I said, if I put it all in a book, when people ask me, how do I start a peer support team, or what do, I can just say, go buy my book.
That's great.
So that book is a resource for, building peer support or how to. However, yeah, I'm still speaking. I'm not saying yes to everything because I have a full-time job, and I also enjoy doing fun things in life besides traveling the city. But I still, am doing certain conferences in some departments. I'll be in Idaho at the end of January for a friend. His department, he invited me, which was really cool. Be at FDIC, I have a workshop there. And then the First Responder Center for Excellence, we are actually hosting a symposium in Nashville, March 20th. And I highly recommend that for anybody who is passionate about the things we talked about today. I was really fortunate. Chief Leeb gave me a lot of authority to design the flow of this conference and reach out to presenters. And I think we have probably the best lineup in first responder mental health that a first responder firefighter conference has had in some time. Dr. Thomas Joyner is going to be the keynote on day one. And when I first started researching this, he was the only one that was really writing about the subject and doing research. He has a lab at Florida State University, and his father died by suicide. So his work has been suicide from day one. And then when the first responder community recognized that there was a problem with suicide around 2011, the NFFF had their first summit. His lab actually started focusing solely on first responders. And so my early research ran across his work, and his work is incredible. So he's going to be our opening keynote. Dr. Sally Spencer Thomas is doing amazing work. And then if you've read the book, Fuck Your Feelings by Ryan Muncie, and it's not spelled F-U-C-K, it's spelled F and then the at sign. It's an incredible book. He talks about increasing emotional bandwidth. He also talks about polyvagal theory, which we didn't go down any of those rabbit holes today, which I'm surprised. And I know we've been talking for a long time, but it's all about.
Please do. I mean, I would love to, since we didn't touch on it, we still got, I'm my own boss. No one can tell me to cut the show.
Right. But the polyvagal theory, the science of safety, it's really fascinating how the research on organisms and how organisms reach homeostasis and the value of safety. Well, we as humans are basically organisms. So throughout his entire book, he talks about the things that make us more resilient, and he doesn't even like that word. We both don't like that word, but have the capacity to withstand more. And it's all things we've kind of talked about today: humor, social support, breathing exercises, gratitude. But that book was just really influential on me and my work. And so he's speaking at our conference, which is so cool. And I'm
Oh, that's
excited
awesome.
about. So definitely, if there was one thing to put on your schedule this year, it is the Suicide Prevention and Mental Wellness Symposium that the NFFF and the First Responder Center for Excellence, FRCE, that we are co-hosting in Nashville, Tennessee, March 20th. And
I'm writing it down. I've seen you guys promote it. I'm so glad you brought that up because that's important for people to know. You guys have been great on social media, promoting mental health, promoting what you guys do. And I saw that symposium on there. I'm glad people know. There's not many symposium, honestly, about what we just talked about. So it's important that everyone knows what's going on and where it is. Man,
and
thank you so much.
it's not going to be like the gloom and doom that we're going to get PTSD and die by suicide. The conference is going to be, how do we prevent all of this? What's working? And it's just, I'm excited, like, for the people that are going to be presenting at it. One of my favorite presenters, Brandon Dryman, he's going to be talking a little bit. Dr. Sarah Janke, Kelly O'Dare out of Florida, who's created the Second Alarm Project. She's going to be talking about building a cultural competency. And then Chief Lieb and we actually developed a new program, and it's awesome. It's basically about rethinking and not trusting everything that we're told to trust, and why that's important, and how that can lead us to continue to find solutions and keep people alive. So
Thinking outside the box. I love it.
yes.
Yeah, absolutely. We always got to be changing the way we think. We can't do it the way we've always done it. It don't work.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Yeah. Oh man, that's great stuff. I absolutely love this. This is fantastic. Such great information. Such a great conversation with you, Dena. I really appreciate it. Anything else that you want to give? Any information, numbers, or helpful tips at all that you find helpful in your journey and your experiences through life, and that you could give to people listening?
So my book opens up, and I actually stole this out of another book, and it opens up and it explains, I'm not a mental health clinician. What worked for me may not work for you. You've got to find what works for you. And I think that's really important, because so often we try to take our experiences and the things that work for us and push them on others. And in order to heal, each person has to find what the scientific world calls agency. Agency is so important, but basically, each person has to find their own solution, and each person has to save themselves. Nobody can fix you. Nobody can save you. Nobody can solve your problems. You have to take the steps to heal, and everybody's journey is different. And so in my book, the whole middle part is all the things that we can do to be a little more resilient. And it's a lot. It's everything from journaling to humor to relationships to mindfulness. There's even discussion on yoga. There's so many things. And it's not to say do all of this and you're going to be healthy, but it's find what works for you. Be authentic about what you're going through. We mentioned it earlier. You continue, like for me, what brought me to suicide, yes, there was something going on at that point. But if I solely blamed that individual at that firehouse and my company officer for that, I would have never gotten to the underlying true causes of what led me there, and it would have repeated again.
Sure.
It took time and it took honesty to understand, like I mentioned earlier, the root of it was stuff that happened earlier in life that led me to having a little bit of a lower self-image. And it led me to trust other people's reactions. Or if somebody was rude to me, or if somebody said something, I trusted it and believed it. So it took time for me to understand myself, understand why I had these thought processes, to realize that they're not true. So all that, and it's such a long answer, and I'm sorry.
No, it's great. No, please.
All that to say is we have to learn just to be honest and authentic about our struggles. And if it doesn't make sense, if you run calls and they don't really bother you, but you think that it has to be the problem, dig a little deeper. There may be something else, and it could be so small and microscopic. And sometimes you might need somebody else to help you uncover it, because our brains do such a good job of self-protection. of hiding our true sources of pain and our true struggles. So just be patient with yourself, practice self-care, say no. It's really freeing to say no to things.
When you say practice self-care, what do you mean?
Well, I think I told you before we started talking today, I slept 9 hours last night. But no, that's not exactly what I mean. But self-care, and that's the whole second part of the book, is self-care increasing our ability to withstand. Resilient people are more resilient because they have a greater capacity. If you are not sleeping and you're working your butt off and you're not spending time with loved ones, you're not spending time enjoying life, you're going to burn out. So self-care is anything that just helps you to gain greater capacity. In the book, there's a chapter on play, and there's this analogy that I kind of discovered. Play and work together just like compression and tension strengthen trusses and strengthen buildings. If you want to be able to work harder, you've got to spend some time playing. And if you want to play harder, you've got to work. If you spend all your time playing, it's no good. If you spend all your time working, that's no good, and both of them will crumble. But together they strengthen each other. So go out and play. Like, what did you enjoy as a kid? Go out and do. Spend time enjoying life. Spend time practicing gratitude. Gratitude is so incredibly helpful in it just increasing our ability to go to work and witness something bad. Just a little bit of gratitude lets us know that bad's not the only thing out there. There's good in the world too. And I said it already, and I'm going to say it again. Say no. Say no to appointments. Say no to extra shifts. Say no to showing up to help people all the time. Take some time for yourself so you're not resentful and exhausted.
Wow. That's a big one right there, to say no. That's a really good message right there. I have that myself. My wife gets on me all the time about not saying no and always picking up shifts, and because I'm always so humbled when someone asks me to help them, especially when it comes to training, and I love teaching. And when people ask me to do it, I'll come off shift and it'll be a crazy night, no sleep and hundreds of calls, but then I finish my shift and I'll go right back to doing something very stressful and physically demanding, and because I want to help and I want to make a difference, and I get home and I'm exhausted. I'm no good to my family.
Yes.
So like you said, no is super important, because also it affects our family life. And if I come home, you come home exhausted, and you're just not in the mood, and that happens all the time, of not wanting to be around anybody, become short with people, and now they don't want to be around you, and you don't want to be around them because they're angry at you all the time. So yeah, that self-care is just, I've learned that the hard way, that you have to be able to take time for yourself. And it's funny, like I talked to some guys, I mean, self-care too, like honestly, like we wear station boots all day. Dudes, if you want to get a pedicure, get a pedicure. I'll say right now, those things are great. I used to be like, oh dude, I'm not going to get one of those. I'm too manly for that. And when I got one of those, I'm like, this is the best thing ever. So that's that self-care, like that. You need to take care of your body and mind, and massages, pedicures, whatever it does to help you relax, and that stress goes from your head to your toes and out. That's it's a huge step. Yeah, saying no for me, that's my hardest part. That's my biggest weakness. So Dena, that's great. Thank you so much.
No, it's mine too. I think all of us as first responders, it's all of ours, but you have to, and I've learned that.
Well, awesome. Dena Ali, thank you so much for being on the C.A.N Report today. It has been a pleasure. I got so much out of this. I hope everyone else did too. And go on the websites, the social medias, it's all there. This information is not secret. So please look it up, look her up. And you've written so many great articles. And some of the articles aren't just mental health either. I've read a bunch of articles too. You have articles about strategies and tactics, and so you're out there. You've done your homework. You've got your seat at the table, and I'm so blessed to have you here with me today. I love your sense of humor, by the way. You've been a pleasure for us communicating back and forth, all the fun stuff. So the fact that you're so down to earth makes this so much easier, and it makes it a pleasure to talk to you. So if anyone's struggling, please read the book. It really is going to help a lot, and there's so much great information in there. And if you need someone to talk to, pretty much all of us are open. So if you need somewhere to turn, I can always say you can reach out to me. Like Dena Ali even said, like, you have to learn the word no. And sometimes if you're unavailable because I'm taking care of myself, that's, I'm doing that self-care as well. But we're all available to help people. There's numbers, there's information out there. We're in a world where our computer is at our hand. So look up that information, reach out, and you're going to get the help you need. And again, that self-care is super important. Dena Ali, thank you so much. I'm gonna finish it with a quote, a reference to the book that I referenced to, the Eddie Jocko, The Happiest Man on Earth. The quote that he wrote in his book, he had many great quotes and great stories. One that stuck with me is, "Please do not walk in front of me. I may not be able to follow. Please do not walk behind me. I may not be able to lead. Just walk beside me and be my friend." So I think that's such an important message. And that was one of the last things that I read from him. And I was about to bawl my eyes out on the plane. So man, he's passed away a few years now, but he touched my heart with those words. And Dena, you've really made a difference with me. And I'm so happy that you became a part of the program. So I will end it now. Thank you so much for everyone listening. Dena, you stay right there. Thank you all for tuning in to the C.A.N Report. Nozzle Tov, everybody.